Hello and welcome to Spellbook by the Numbers. I'm your host, Brandon Elliott, and this is the show that examines the D&D 5th edition Spellbook, all the way from A to Z. This is our second episode, and we will be covering 7 spells. This takes some time. I'm not gonna beat around the bush or anything. We're gonna jump right in. The one thing I will say is I'm definitely trying to speed up my evaluations over the last episode, so we'll see how it goes. Let's get in the book. Our first spell today is Animate Dead. It is a cleric wizard spell, and so both on prepared casters, and it reads as thus. It has a casting time of 1 minute. It's a 3rd level necromancy spell with a range of 10 feet. It has vocal, somatic, and material components requiring a drop of blood, a piece of flesh, and a pinch of bone dust. And it has a duration of instantaneous, meaning once it happens, it takes effect immediately and doesn't really end. It just happens. It's not like you cast Animate Dead and then it's good for a day or 2 days or 3 days. There is a time limitation in the spell, as we will see as we get into it. You use it to create an undead servant of a corpse, medium or small humanoid within range. It rises as a skeleton or a zombie, your choice, and it says that the DM has the creature's statistics. Often, if you're a DM, just give your player those statistics. It's going to make it a lot easier to run that. If they have the statistics, they can look at it, they can see their attack rolls, all of that. On your turn, you can use your bonus action to command any creature you've made with this spell within 60 feet of you. You command them mentally, and you can command any or all of them at the same time. So you can be like, A, B, and C do this, or all of them attack this creature. What this means is that you can't say like, hey, you're attacking this, you're attacking this, you're attacking this. They're all going for the same thing if you're issuing the same command to all of them. And since you don't have 2 bonus actions, you're issuing 1 command per turn. The creature is under your control for 24 hours, but after that, the spell doesn't end. You merely lose control of them, and they just kind of become a wandering evil skeleton or zombie. However, you can cast the spell again and reassert your control. And the nice thing about that is when you do that, you can get up to 4 creatures that you've created with this spell in 1 casting. Okay. So that's the overview of the spell. It is fantastic. For the components, I think that really just some simple utterings, the gathering and arranging of the bones for your somatic components. You have your material components, and an uttering like, by the power of the grave, I call forth unholy allies to aid me in my quest. Something like that. It's a really, really good spell if you can get set up. It requires a lot of micromanagement, and you should be prepared to deal with that if you are casting it. DMs, I would be wary of this spell just because it can take up a lot of time at the table, so you need to require your player to be prepared with the statistics, be ready to roll quickly, to move through everything very quickly, otherwise it will take a while. I would have sheets for all of your skeletons. I would keep track of all the equipment that you're going to need to buy for them. You can get them better weapons. You can get them better armor if you have the money to do so. Even magic weapons if you really want to make your skeletons super awesome. Another great thing that you're going to need, bag of holding if you can get your hands on one, is fantastic used in conjunction of this spell. It gives you some great storage space. You're going to need to have weapons, you're going to need to have armor, you're going to need to have a place to keep your bones, and a bag of holding is going to help with that because you cannot carry all of it. Who should be casting it? Both clerics and wizards are great choices. For when you don't think that you can take the time to prep, you just leave it off your spell list, but when you want to prep to raise an undead army, you have it ready for you, so I really like the spell. The second spell is another one of my favorites, actually. It's the spell Animate Objects. It is a bard, sorcerer, wizard spell, and it reads as thus. It's another doozy. It is a 5th level transmutation, by the way. Casting time 1 action, range 120 feet, components vocal and somatic, and concentration of up to a minute. Objects come to life at your command. Choose up to 10 non-magical objects within range that are not being worn or carried. And mediums count as 2, large counts as 4, huge counts as 8. You can animate any object larger than huge. Each target animates and becomes a creature under your control until the spell ends or reduced to 0 hit points. Like Animate Dead, you can use your bonus action to mentally command them if they're within 500 feet of you, issuing one command, same to all or same to some, with the others not receiving commands. Blah, 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 blah. It has the stats for all of the different animated objects. They're pretty simple. It should be noted their constructs. Oh, they have a 10 in their regular stuff. Intelligence and wisdom are 3, charisma is 1. Speed of 30 feet. If they don't have anything that can be a leg, they get a fly speed. So it's actually better to have things that aren't legs. And they have blind sight, but they're blind beyond that distance. And if you command them to attack, they make a single melee attack against a creature within 5 feet. And if you upcast, you can animate more objects. So this spell is really good. Like Animate Dead, action economy is king. So even if your things are weak, the fact that you have multiple of them can really swing a tide. It is concentration, unlike Animate Dead, but it doesn't require as much prep time. My favorite use of the spell is keeping tiny objects in a little satchel on your belt that you can easily just, as you interact with an object, remove the satchel from your belt and drop it so it falls open. Then you have 10 tiny objects there that you animate, and you pull all those up. You have 10 allies. You use that as your action, as your bonus action. You command them. If you have 10 of them, they are swinging with a +8 to hit, and they do a d4 +4 damage. So if you hit with, say, 6 of them, that's 6d4 +24. Even for a 5th level spell, that's not bad, and that's like a middle case scenario. I really like Animate Objects because it has a really high ceiling. If you can get multiple turns of this off, it can be back-breaking damage. But even the middle case isn't bad. It's not like you have to hit that high ceiling. One round of Animate Objects is really good. It should be noted that unless like you're animating 10 +1 daggers, they aren't magical damage, and therefore they are subject to the weaknesses that not having magical damage can provide, as we talked about last week with animal shapes. So that's something to keep in mind if you're fighting a lot of things that are resistant or immune to non-magical damage. This spell may not do it for you. As far as who should be casting Animate Objects, bards, sorcerers, and wizards. It's a great spell. It's something that you can always find a use for. I think anybody should pick it up. I love the spell. In fact, one of my favorite uses that I've ever had the spell, I have a lot. I love this spell. One of them is a very not safe for work story that I cannot tell on this channel. It was hilarious and one of the highlights of the table, though. It was awesome. Another one, in a different campaign, we was like a Magitech sci-fi campaign. We needed to get up an elevator, but the elevator was cut to power, nothing was working, so we actually animated the elevator as a huge creature with no legs, so it could fly up the shaft, carrying a few of us at a time. It was super cool. So it's just one of those really good spells. So the next spell is Anti-Life Shell. It is a 5th level druid spell. It has components of vocal and somatic. I think that the components here will be something like, as a master of nature's cycles, I know life and death, and things that are life shall not harm me, nor come my way. Something like that. And then the somatic component should, of course, be you putting up your shell, like, wow. So what it says is a shimmering barrier extends out from you in a 10-foot radius and moves with you, remaining centered on you and hedging out creatures other than undead and constructs. The barrier lasts for the duration. An affected creature cannot move, pass through, or reach through, but they can attack spells or make attacks with ranged or reach weapons through the barrier. If you move so that an affected creature is forced to pass through the barrier, the spell ends. I'm a little bit disappointed that this can't be cast by the Necromancy Wizard, as I think that they are a really good candidate for this spell. Even then, I'm not a huge fan. Grave Cleric can pick it up, but the Grave Cleric isn't really about making the undead. If you've got an extra prep, go ahead and prepare it. If there's something that you think you might use it for, but it's not a catch-all, which I really don't like. It's useful in some circumstances, But undead can get through it, constructs can get through it. Creatures with reached weapons, they can get through it. Spellcasters, they don't care. They're just going to cast at you. There's so much that can penetrate this barrier. There's a lot that can't, but there's so much that can that it feels like there's always going to be an option that still hedges you out. And this spell does take your concentration, which can be... Wait, no, yeah, it does. Which can be rough. So I'd watch out for that as well. The other big thing that I don't really like about it is you can't even really protect your allies well with it. Because if you'd move, it hedges things out. With this barrier, living things can't pass through it. So if you move, and you move it into a creature that would be affected, aka an ally, unless they are readying their action to move with you, all of them, and wasting their actions to do so, the first time you try to move having anti-life shell out with an ally in there with you, it's shutting off immediately. So, I don't know. It can be good in the right situations, but I would just be very wary of making this spell a go-to. The next spell we have here is Anti-Magic Field. It is a cleric wizard spell, and it reads as thus. It is a 8th level abjuration spell with a casting time of 1 action, a range of self in a 10-foot radius sphere around you, and it has vocal, somatic, and material components, a pinch of powdered iron or iron fillings, and it has a duration of concentration up to an hour. This spell is mighty complex, so buckle up. It creates an invisible sphere of anti-magic and a 10-foot radius around you. The area is divorced from magical energy, so this does several things. Summon creatures can disappear, spells can't be cast, magic items become mundane. Until the spell ends, the sphere moves with you, centered on you. Spells and other magical effects, except those created by an artifact or a deity, are suppressed in the sphere. So even if they cast something on themselves outside, move in, it does not affect them while they're in the sphere. A slot expended to cast a suppressed spell is consumed. While an effect is suppressed, it doesn't function, and the time it spends suppressed counts against its duration. If you target a creature with a magical effect inside the sphere when you are out of it with like a magic missile, does not work. If an area of magic overlaps with the spell, whatever overlap part, it's like a fireball here, anti-magic spelled here. The Venn diagram, the fireball does not exist. Any active or magical spells are suppressed. Magic items, again, magical travel, you can't teleport through, you can't teleport into it. Creatures and objects that are summoned, they disappear, but if the spell moves, then they reappear in the exact same spot. And of course, spells like Dispel Magic don't do anything to it. And anti-magic spheres do not nullify each other. I think for components, it's got to be that, again, that barrier creation for somatic, but for vocal components, I really like something like, I have become a master of magic, and I control what gets to be here and what does not. Something really cool like that. It's a really good spell. It would not be my go-to, because it shuts down your own... You're a caster. You're a caster with 8-level spells, which means doing spells is what you do. So you are shutting down at least your own self with this spell. But, hot damn, when you're fighting an enemy spellcaster that's more powerful than you, if you can get them in an anti-magic field, especially if you can get them in an anti-magic field, and you have a martial ally that's grappling them there and holding them there, and then beating the crap out of them, that's when it becomes fantastic. So it requires some coordination against the right enemies, but when it does, it's really great. And what is good about this is the list that it's on are the Cleric and the Wizard, 2 prepared casters. That's all. This is not a spell I would pick for a spontaneous caster, because it's not going to be useful all the time, but it's a situationally useful, really cool spell. And for the Cleric and Wizard, I really, really like it as having that option in your back pocket. Coordinate with your fighters and your barbarians and your rangers, and you can really plan to put some serious hurt when you need it. The next spell we're going to talk about is Antipathy Sympathy. It is a druid wizard spell. And it's another doozy. All of these spells we get to talk about today are some doozies, so this is fun. It's another 8th level spell, an enchantment, with a casting time of 1 hour, a range of 60 feet, and vocal, somatic, and material components being a lump of alum soaked in vinegar or a drop of honey for the antipathy or the sympathy, so those go with that. And then the duration lasts for 10 days. This spell attracts or repels creatures of your choice. You target something within range, either a huge or smaller object or creature, or an area that is no longer than a 200 feet cube. Then you specify a kind of intelligent creature, such as red dragon, goblins, or vampire, and either essentially the spell attracts or repulses those types of creatures. So antipathy makes it so they come within 60 feet and they're frightened of it and they're wanting to get away. Whereas sympathy says when they come around it, they're drawn to it. And then they can't move away willingly. And then there's rules for ending the effect. But we're not going to get too deeply into all of that because it should be pretty obvious that this is not a combat spell. This is a spell for controlling the fabric of the universe, one. But this is a spell to ward an area. Say you know that there's a lot of boogity going on in a region and you need to investigate this area, you can take some time, ward your area against the specific boogity, and none of that is going to get you. Is this spell great? No, not really for an 8th level spell. It's powerful, but it's very situational, and it has a very long casting time. It requires a lot of preparation to use. It's something that you really shouldn't focus on, but know that it exists, because there will be a time in your campaign where you'll be like, huh, that'll be really helpful. I need to keep this area locked down or warded, or this fortification on a wall, this part of the wall can't break if we're defending a city from siege. So say we're at the elven city of Tir Tengnir and we're being attacked, and we're attacked by the dwarven armies. Antipathy against dwarves on your weak point of the wall keeps that weak point from being overrun. Something like that. But really situational, not something that you're going to cast all the time. We got 2 spells left, and this next one is another favorite of mine. It is Arcane Eye. It is a wizard spell. It is a 4th level divination with a casting time of 1 action, a range of 30 feet, vocal, somatic, and material components with a duration of concentration up to an hour. You create an invisible magical eye within range, and you mentally receive visual information from the eye. It has normal vision and dark vision to 30 feet and can look in every direction. As an action, you can move the eye up to 30 feet in any direction, and it can, there's no limit, it just can't go to other planes, and it can enter a opening as small as 1 inch in diameter, which is about that big. So pretty small openings that it can fit through. A solid barrier can block it, though, of course. Do I like this spell? Probably too much, yeah. I'm really biased towards divination spells. I'm a very strong believer that knowledge is power. And the more knowledge you have, the better decisions that you can make, and the more efficient you can be with your spells, and the more prepared the rest of your team members can be. And if you don't get caught with your pants down, you're gonna be a lot better off. So yes, I like it. For your components, by the way, I would say something like I see all, and then the eye appears and goes out, something like that. Wizards look real cool when they do that. But no, it's real good. It's a great scouting tool. If I had to say one thing about this, is it does take a 4th level slot. And when you do ask this spell to compete against spells like Banishment and Polymorph and Dimension Door, maybe it's not as good as some of those. But I do think that you shouldn't undervalue this effect and the ability to scout out rooms of a dungeon and down halls and pathways to see what might be hiding and waiting for you should not be overlooked. It's a really fun role to play in a party, so keep that in mind. One more spell. It's another wizard-only spell. It's Arcane Gate. Arcane Gate is a 6th level conjuration spell with a casting time of 1 action, a range of 500 feet, vocal and somatic components, and a duration of concentration up to 10 minutes. You create 2 portals that remain for the duration above 2 points on the ground, one within 10 feet of you, another within 500 feet, and circular portals appear over each thing. And then you can rotate the rings as you need. The portal's only in one side of the ring, and then any creature that passes through one side pops out the other side. So if you've ever played the game Portal, real similar to that concept, except the rings are in space. Kind of like if you've played Overwatch Symmetra's Teleporter. You have a way you go in and a way you go out, except you can rotate those as actions. Components. I think something like drawing the ring for your somatic components, or maybe even like a portal gun if you want to be meta. But I think drawing the rings as somatic components, and then for your vocal components, something like I sunder the very fabric of this plane to link these 2 points. Real wizardy, you know. So this spell, for a movement ability that takes up your concentration, so it's going to break any other concentration spell that you have, for what is essentially a teleportation ability, it's kind of expensive level-wise. Movement abilities are always really good and shouldn't be overlooked, but dropping a 6th level spell for this, I don't like it. At a 5th level spell, maybe, but you get 1 6th level, and there's some really powerful options for the wizard, like Disintegrate. So giving up stuff like that for this, there's also, like, there's some shenanigan potential there, but because of the restrictions, you can't do the cool portal stuff anyway. It's literally just a movement ability. You might be able to catch a creature in between the 2 rings, but as a DM, I wouldn't allow that. So good luck. I'm pretty forgiving, and I wouldn't even allow that. Like I said, I'm not saying it's a bad spell, but I'm not a fan. I wouldn't waste my 6th level spell slots on Arcane Gate. Not in a million years, unless I knew that my DM liked to do dungeons that had lots of pits that were very dangerous to pass over by just flying or anything, and it was mostly safe to teleport. But that's such a specific wonky scenario. Well, I think we made it through a lot quicker. I'm much happier with this time, and I expect this to be the new length. Hopefully you like this episode a little bit better than the last one. Hopefully it was a little bit less wordy and crazy, but thanks for sticking with us. Hopefully you're learning a little something. I know I enjoy going through all the spells, and it's been really, really fun to do it with you. I want to thank my mother podcast, Dear Dungeon. It's a wonderful podcast that I run with one of my best friends, Audrey. We take your tabletop advice questions and we give them an answer, so why not go check that out? Give us a listen. You'll really, really enjoy it. I'd also like to say, if you're looking to follow a bit more of me, you can find me on Twitter at TheLostSamurai7. I don't use it a ton, but I do try to put some important stuff there, including news on different homebrew that I'm working on and other projects. So why not check that out? And at the end of every episode, like I said, I'm going to be doing a media rec. And this one is for a podcast run by some really great friends of mine. The editor has been a friend of mine for years, and the cardboard captain, his wife, she's become a friend of mine, and she and her group are wonderful. So go check out the podcast Cardboard Curse. They play the weirdest, most awful board games they can find, so you don't have to, and they let you know about them. Stuff like the CSI board game, or Babysitter's Club board game, or the SpongeBob SquarePants board game. It's weird stuff. But go give them a listen. I'll have a link down there in the description. Thanks, guys. Class is dismissed. I'll see you next week.